Hi there, Chris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to Stone Age Countdown. This is Rocket Knight Adventures for Sega Genesis. It has long been one of my very favorite games, and it is finally being re-released on modern platforms later this year. So I thought, what better time than now than to do a countdown of my favorite Rocket Knight games. So here are my top 5 Rocket Knight games.
Number 5. Where's number 5?
There is no number 5.
What do you mean?
There are only 4 Rocket Knight games.
What?
There are only 4 Rocket Knight games. You can't do a top 5.
Well, not with that attitude you can't.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Number 5. Rocket Robot on Wheels. Rocket Robot on Wheels is a Nintendo 64 game about a sentient unicycle going on adventures. It's from Sucker Punch, the company who would move on to bring us the likes of Sly Cooper, Infamous, and Ghosts of Tsushima. But before they became a Sony subsidiary, they made this weird Nintendo 64 game, which is cool, but really doesn't fit in at all with the Rocket Knight series.
That's because it's a totally unrelated game.
Hey, shut up! Rocket Robot on Wheels may be a pretty great Nintendo 64 game, but it's a terrible Rocket Knight game. This one easily lands in the number 5 spot. Number 4. Rocket Knight. Released in 2010 on Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network, Rocket Knight served as an attempt to revitalize the Rocket Knight franchise by bringing it to the then current generation of platforms. And it's okay? The new visual style really loses just about all the personality the original sprite-based games had, and comes off looking weirdly generic. The way the 3D camera turns to look at certain areas puts parts of the game at odd angles sometimes too. There's still jetpack-fueled fun, but while it seemed cool on paper, it was really missing the mark. Of all the actual Rocket Knight games out there, this one's easily at the bottom of the list. Number 3. Sparkster Rocket Knight Adventures 2. Following up on Rocket Knight Adventures was an exciting prospect because, well, that game rules. Unfortunately, this Genesis sequel didn't quite hit the mark. Don't misunderstand me, this game is great. It's a lot of fun, it looks awesome, the soundtrack is killer. It's a genuinely good game. But it takes a few liberties with the Rocket Knight formula that I was just not a fan of. The laser sword is just a sword now, and it stabs forward instead of swinging in an arc downward. Sparkster moves with a lot more Sonic the Hedgehog style momentum too. And they changed the way the rocket pack works, which is auto-charging constantly instead of charging out manually. It's still a really solid game, but it just doesn't quite stick the landing. Number 2. Sparkster. Strangely enough, this game is considered a spin-off side story instead of the officially canon sequel, which is weird since this one plays more like its predecessor than its Genesis counterpart, which is why I personally prefer it. While still never quite hitting the high notes of the original game, Sparkster for Super NES is a stellar showcase of Konami's abilities. It's bright, beautiful, and full of wacky bosses and effects that only Konami could do back then. It's got the same box art and soundtrack as the Genesis game, though the songs play in a completely different order, but this is a totally unique game in every other way. It's absurdly difficult at times, but it plays and feels more like a Rocket Knight game than its counterpart, which is why it lands in the number 2 spot. Number 1. Rocket Knight Adventures. For as good as the other Rocket Knight games are, and Rocket Robot on Wheels I guess, nothing comes close to the first game's charm. This isn't just my favorite Rocket Knight game, it's my favorite Genesis game. It utilizes so many crazy visual tricks to dazzle players. It's got a great level of challenge that doesn't make you want to bang your head too hard against a wall. The characters are super expressive, especially the adorable Sparkster, and that soundtrack, absolutely killer stuff, especially this boss music. Rocket Knight Adventures is a masterclass in 16-bit game design, and while it's super bizarre at times, it all comes together in a way that only a handful of games of that generation did. This one is an all-timer, and I cannot wait to play it again.
Well, there you have it. Those are my top 5 Rocket Knight games. Yes, I said 5. thanks for watching, everybody. If you like what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, and let me know down in the comments what are your favorite Rocket Knight games. Do you think I should have messed around with the order? Do you really like that Xbox 360 game more than I do? I don't know, maybe some people do. Do you not think the original Genesis game is the best? I think it is amazing, but they're all good games, and I'm really glad they're coming back into limelight so more people will have the chance to experience the adventures of Sparkster the Possum. Thanks again, everybody. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.